So first of all, I would like to say a massive welcome to everyone. This is the Hive Mind Q&A. It's part of a project that is funded by the Arts Council in England. For those of you that don't know me, my name's Gemma. I am the company director of Ceridwen Theatre Company. And I'll be speaking to our three producers, Amie, Hayley and Helena, about their experiences of producing and giving you all the chance to ask them some questions. Right, so just a reminder of how the evening will go. In a moment, I'm going to get our producers to introduce themselves with their names, a couple of facts, and then I'll start it off with a few questions. Please do be reminded that this session is being recorded. All your microphones are on mute, unless I've invited you to answer a question. So any questions, please put in the chat box. As I've said, you can access this by clicking on the chat option down at the bottom of your screen. Right, let's get this session started. I'm just going to unmute our guys' mics. Excellent. Right, so we have Amie, Hayley and Helena. We're going to do this alphabetically, always the best way to do it. So Amie, if you can introduce yourself, give a couple of facts, and then we'll go straight on to Hayley and then Helena.
Lovely. Hello, I'm Amie. I am a producer, but I make theatre shows for children. I also am an arts educator and facilitator, and I'm also a writer.
Lovely. Hello, I'm Hayley. I am a producer and also a director. Similar to Amie, I make quite a lot of shows for children. I'm also an education practitioner and I'm a writer also.
Hi, I'm Helena. I'm a producer. I work with Ceridwen Theatre Company, which I co-founded with Gemma, who's hosting, and also Vivian, who's hidden away on the call somewhere as well. I also direct, I do workshop facilitation, and I'm an actress as well.
Excellent. Right, so you've had a nice, just a brief introduction to these guys. It's lovely hearing from them. So what I'm going to do is start the ball rolling with a few questions. So we'll start off with the first one. From your own experience, can you describe the role of a producer?
Shall I go first again? Yes.
Yes, please.
Brilliant. So we talked about this a little bit recently, and the word that really sprung to mind was that as a producer, I think you're a catalyst for projects. So essentially nothing happens if you don't kind of get it started. But then as well as being a catalyst, I guess you also do a lot of things like funding and kind of setting everything in place. It's quite a logistical role, but then it's also quite a kind of people-centered role as well, in terms of holding space for people and managing people. And sometimes in my experience, that has also kind of meant kind of managing relationships in some way within casts and companies.
Okay. It's going to be really difficult because I just want to repeat everything that Amie has just said. I agree, absolutely a catalyst. I think when we were talking about it last week, I used the word spearhead and caretaker. So I think you're the initial spearhead that gets everything sort of put in place, but then also your role slightly changes to a caretaker who sort of steps back, oversees and manages the entire project. And similar to what Amie said, I think your communicative skills have to be absolutely excellent. To be a producer, you just have to be checking in with everybody all the time, making sure that everything's running smoothly. It's your job to hold the project in the air, is what I would say.
Absolutely everything they've already said, for sure. We talked about the fact that producing is vastly different depending on the scale of the project that you're working on. So the three of us work on projects that are not gigantic budgets and often require funding and things to support them. So in the context that we're working in, you might be quite hands-on in different departments. So for example, if you're working on a large budget project, you might just be a liaison point for the sort of the marketing team and the other creative teams that are there. Whereas on a smaller budget project, you might actually be getting involved in the practical side of doing those things as well. Hopefully that makes sense. So on a smaller project, you're more hands-on rather than just a liaison point for those departments.
Excellent. So we've covered a rough idea of the role of a producer. So here's a good question for you then. What made you want to work in this industry? Yeah, Amie?
I'll go first again. I'll try not to say everything everyone else wants to say. In terms of the theatre industry, I mean, I started off as an actor and I guess a theatre maker. I studied devised theatre at Dartington College of Arts before it closed. And I loved site-specific and immersive theatre, and that was kind of what I just wanted to make all the time. And it's interesting because I think, and maybe it's the same for all of us and a lot of people who produce, that sort of producing happened by accident, because I quite quickly realised you can spend your whole career sitting around waiting for things to, like other people to make things happen, and it just doesn't. And I think I'm too impatient for that as well, and I also like being in charge, so I like knowing that I can oversee and kind of manage everything, and producing your own work also I guess allows you to do that. So yeah, that's how I kind of came to where I am now.
Hey, Hayley?
Similar roots to Amie. I did start off as an actress as well. I think I first wanted to go into producing when I did an immersive show in a cave in Devon. And it followed a whole cave circuit, and everybody was immersed in it. And I just remember thinking, okay, now theatre can only be done like this. It can be done no other way than in caves. And after that, I guess similar to Amie, that I just wanted to make things happen. And you do spend, especially as an actor, I think you spend a lot of time sort of waiting for the phone to ring or applying for jobs, when actually just getting out there and making your own work and making things that you're actually passionate about as well. There was a lot of things that I wanted to make work about, and I think that's what got me into producing, is going, okay, I like this subject and I want to make other people experience it, and I'm going to produce something. I think that was simply the reason why I got into it.
It wasn't a conscious choice to get into producing. I think same as the other two. It's not something that I ever studied or learnt about, or even really had a clue that I was doing it until I was doing it, if that makes sense. I didn't know that what I was doing was actually producing. So I started out very young in a sort of amateur setting with a youth group that really got you involved in all of the aspects of putting a show on. And that just slowly turned into a professional company, which evolved over many years into Ceridwen, which is what it is now. But yeah, I think particularly if you're creative in any way, whether that is an actor, as all three of us have sort of come from that background, but anything else, if you just want to make your own work happen, and not be the person sitting around waiting for that phone to ring, then getting into producing is a really good way of just an outlet for your ideas, and it can be on any sort of scale that you want, and that's why it's brilliant. I started out in profit share shows and then gradually have built it up to what we've got now.
Excellent. So we're doing quite well with these questions. So you all seem to have your own niches for producing theatre. We've got Amie's LGBTQ, LGBTQ plus, apologies, and Hayley and Helena producing site-specific theatres. So I'd like you to tell us a little bit about your own niche, how it actually came to be. I think what I'll do is I'll start with Hayley, then Helena, then Amie. Give you a chance just to refresh yourself, Amie.
So I think, as I said previous, I did a show in a cave, and it was just magical. I think when I was at drama school, it was always theatre in a box, and 4 walls, and there was never anything outside of that. And then suddenly this whole world opened up to me, where I'm like, you could literally do a show on the side of a pavement and it's immersive theatre. But that, I think, was, as a producer, something that was really exciting, because you can literally make work anywhere you want to. And it's immersive and it's interactive. And I just love going to really cool places and working out what shows fit into those cool places. And it's also, usually I do a lot of outdoor stuff. So you get to experience this amazing, magical outdoor world. And also you see theatre as well at the same time. And I think part of me was, I really wanted children and young people to get into theatre. And sometimes when you twin it with, like, I don't know, woods or castles, they're slightly more inclined to sort of come along to see a Shakespeare or something like that. So I think that was why I got into it originally, and why I like doing site-specific work particularly.
I don't know about you, I've definitely, whenever I've just been wandering through a place that I've gone, oh my God, this is stunning, I can put a show on here.
Yeah. Exactly. And I think young people particularly, you know, they might not be inclined to go and watch a production of Macbeth in a theatre, but you tell them that Macbeth is going to be deep down in a dark cave and it's going to be really pitch black and people are going to absolutely terrify you, and suddenly your audiences are full and you're selling out loads of tickets and everybody wants to be involved. So I think it's just that mentality of going, there are other ways to do things if you just broaden your mind a little bit.
Helena?
Yeah, so I originally got into sort of site-specific stuff, doing that creative thing of someone saying, are you able to do this? And you're like, yeah, of course I can. And then you kind of figure it out in the car on the way, how you actually do the thing that you said that you're going to do. So yeah, I think we were approached by some unusual venues, like some caves and railways and stuff to make some work for them. And it sort of happened like that, and it was really learning as we go. But what I love about venues in particular that don't host theatre is they're often some of the most enthusiastic partners to work with, because it's not something that they get all the time, and therefore you meet these amazing people that will do all sorts to just try and help you get your show on, and I love that. And I also love working in venues where the venue itself is your set, it's your backdrop. So whether that's an incredible forest with beautiful trees, or whether that's an ancient cave or whatever it is, that is your set and that is your backdrop. And you know, the wow factor is kind of there for you a lot of the time, and I love it.
And Amie?
So yeah, mine's an interesting one. I guess my career is like a lot of different building blocks in a lot of different places, and every now and again they all come together. So obviously I started in theatre, and then I kind of came to move to London from Devon, where I did my degree, and I started doing a lot of work in youth theatres, which I loved doing and still love doing. So I got a lot of experience working with children and young people, and then after that I went to work, I was making theatre as well as kind of simultaneously alongside that, and did a big immersive project in a warehouse in Peckham years ago, which Hayley was in many years ago. It's kind of my first attempt at something. I learned a lot very quickly, but then I moved over into working into sort of diversity and inclusion work. So I worked for a charity called Diversity Role Models, delivering workshops that tackle homophobic, biphobic and transphobic bullying in schools, and I was doing a lot of work in secondary schools doing that. That was nothing to do with theatre. It was a completely different job in that sense, although I think a lot of my facilitation and theatre skills lent themselves very well to it, and I was doing that, and I was working in secondary schools, and then I was a facilitator for them, and then I left there and I was at a bit of a sort of like, oh, what now? And I thought, well, I really love doing that work. It feels really important to me. And especially kind of tackling that homophobic, we did a lot of tackling homophobic language in schools. So kids often say things like, oh, that's so gay, and kind of, so we were doing a lot of tackling that in secondary schools. And I started thinking, well, yeah, that's great that we're doing that, but actually it shouldn't even be an issue in secondary schools. We should be addressing this at a really young age, so that it's not even a thing by the time you get to secondary school. And I thought, well, I love making theatre, and I actually would love to do something for small children. So I came up with the idea of making a theatre show, which was just about, it was a fairy story about a princess who wanted her own comedy show, and she happened to fall in love with another princess. And that was kind of how an LGBT kids show was born, and that started life at the Arcola and Omnibus theatres, and then it went kind of on a tour to festivals. We went to Latitude with it and other places, and then we did a partnerships with Jackson's Lane Theatre, who did a big project called Haringey Has Pride, and we took it to schools in Haringey. So it was really kind of that had a really natural, it kind of all happened really organically and naturally. And then eventually I actually wrote a book last year, and the story of that play is the first story in the book. So it was a book for children, for schools, to teach about LGBTQ plus people and relationships. So it kind of just followed this arc. And then this year, which was really lovely, so I do a lot of work with the Omnibus Theatre, and Marie McCarthy there is just amazing, and she's always kind of opened her door to me. Like, she didn't really know who I was when I first approached her, and the door's been open there. And so this year we made a show for their Pride Festival, but on Zoom. And it was really interesting because I think Zoom is potentially a new site, like in terms of site-specific work and being able to create immersive experiences. I am now very interested and excited by what we can potentially do on Zoom, because we might have to for a little bit. So yeah, we made a new kids show for Zoom called The Wrong Rainbow, which was great, really good, fun.
I do find it fascinating, actually, that it is the place to be in. You wouldn't normally think of a website as an actual site, which is funny because that's in the name, really, isn't it? So it's interesting. I know I just think that's absolutely fantastic that you've already adapted to that. Hayley, Helena, have you found what have you found doing with Zoom instead? They're not obviously this Q&A part of Helena's project, but
I led my first. So I haven't done a theatre show on Zoom yet, but I led my first Zoom creative workshop with young people. I was absolutely terrified, just because it's a completely new thing. I've been, leading workshops for 10 years, maybe longer, 15 years. But it was completely new. I was terrified. The kids were lovely. It all went brilliantly. There's just like a few little things to get used to. And I've got another one in a few weeks' time. But I'm just so excited that things are still happening. It's been pretty dire and pretty hard for everyone, but the fact that we have these ways and means of still making work happen, whether that's on Zoom or whether that's in a socially distanced way, like I'm all for it.
We did an interactive A Midsummer Night's Dream where we basically prepped everyone by email that they were going to have to join in. So if you're on that call and your camera's on, be prepared. And actually, it was a lot of fun. And we kind of it's testing the water for, we are doing a Christmas show online, which will be interactive and people will be prepped beforehand as well. So the audience come in are going to get what their part is in the email beforehand. And the Midsummer one was more like a test of how we would do that, but generally everybody seemed very up for it, and it's actually quite weird working out how you can be interactive whilst online. I saw an amazing show where somebody, I think, was meant to pour water on the other person on Zoom, and so they like poured water through their camera, and then suddenly that person got soaking wet on the other camera, like as if they drenched them. And it was just like, there's like little tiny things that you can do on Zoom that is just amazing, and it makes everything really fun. Yeah, it's just thinking outside the box.
And I think to add to that, there are things you can do on Zoom that you can't do in real life, and that's what has the potential to be really exciting. Like I think the show that we've made couldn't be done in real life. It just couldn't. It wouldn't work because the whole premise is that it is a Zoom meeting and these characters are having a Zoom meeting. And I think there's a lot of fun to be had in that, and and to just really explore that medium of making theatre.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys have noticed there's a lot of celebrities that are doing that as well online, and they're posting up, and nice shout out to like Hugh Grant, love him, and he's been doing stuff with Ryan Reynolds as well, and he's just been they're just fun little quirky things where they come on and then go, oh no, this isn't that kind of chat, and then they just get off and leave them, and he's like, oh okay, that went bad. And it's silly things like that I find that people are working with and they're completely adapting to, which is just mad in the creative world.
There's something really excited about winging it a bit as well,
Yeah.
it's a new area, isn't it? And you just kind of feeling your way through it.
So one of the things that I'd like to ask you about is because you guys have been talking a lot about different places. You've worked in theatres, you worked site specific. So can you tell me the differences that you found between producing site specific theatre and theatre productions? And I think I'll point this one at Helena this time and then go around to Amie, then Hayley.
The difference. In terms of like the creative side of the show, whether that's a theatre venue or anywhere, you have to think about the specifics of that venue, because obviously theatre venues have their own little quirks that you need to deal with. So that side of things, you do have to consider it, but I don't think it's the main thing to focus on. When you're producing for a venue that's not a theatre, there's a lot of the what's the word I'm looking for, organisational stuff that you don't need to do with a theatre. So for example, we produced a show at the Albany in Coventry. They handled the marketing, the front of house, the bar staff, the, you know, all the basic stuff that you need for an audience to turn up, ushers for the theatre, blah blah blah. If you're working in a cave that's run by a family, they don't have those people, so you've got to think about how you're going to do all of the basics. Where are people going to go to when they arrive? Who's going to take their ticket? Who's going to let them in? Is that going to be an actor, or do you need other people? Is there a cool way you can make it part of your story? So there's all of that that's different when you're producing for a venue that's not used to hosting theatre. And then the other side of it, as I'm sure Hayley will agree, is risk assessment. If you're producing in a venue that's not a theatre, you have all sorts of weird and wonderful things that you have to consider for your risk assessment. So that just will probably take quite a bit longer and have all these intricacies to consider. And I've never done it before, as part of this Hive Mind project, we worked for 2 days, me, Amie and Hayley, on a farm, sort of looking at a hypothetical theatre project, and we hypothetically risk assessed a project, didn't we? But we sort of did it communally together, and I've never done that before, and I don't ever want to do a risk assessment in a different way in the future. I want it to be a group exercise because it's just so much easier. That's me anyway.
Amie?
I mean, I don't have a lot to add. I would say, obviously, when you're working out the theatre space, there are so many more opportunities for creating an immersive experience, but there are so many more possibilities for things to go wrong. So it's just thinking through everything. And I have definitely, I've had experiences where audiences have stepped over some warning tape that was there to keep them on one side of it. I've had experiences where audiences have wandered off to have a look around the back of something where they really shouldn't be. And I think it's just assuming that anyone will try anything. So just creating absolute clarity for an audience of where they can and where they cannot go. Because otherwise you have this really awkward moment where someone either has to step, or, you know, it's just, so I think, you know, assuming that people will not, like, people are cheeky as well. They'll sort of wander off into places and do anything. So just assuming, that's a nice word to use actually, isn't it? Cheeky. People are cheeky. They will wander into spaces. They will step over barriers that are meant to keep them out. So just being really clear where they can and cannot go, and kind of giving very clear instructions when they arrive somewhere, what the deal is, where they can and can't go, and just making sure there's absolute clarity on that. I think that's all I'd add.
Yeah, do you ever feel like you really just need to take the parents' approach on this? You know, it's like warning little kids and then going, if you do anything other than what I've said, you will die. And it's great, you know, terrifying, but at least the kid then holds your hand and does not move. And you feel like you want to do that with the adults sometimes. Make sure that you're holding their hand. Sorry, Hayley.
I always need someone to hold my hand, I think, Gemma, to be honest with you. I am the person that wanders off into places that she shouldn't. So I'm trying not to repeat anything that's been said. I guess the main difference I would say with doing sort of site-specific work is whether the weather is going to affect you, and how many shows you might have rained off or thunderstormed on or anything like that, and whether you can continue with a wet weather plan. That would be one of the main things I'd say hasn't maybe been said. Everything else pretty much has. Risk assessment is huge for outdoor work. Like, nobody needs Juliet stood on top of a gorgeous like hill near a tree, and then she takes one step to the side and suddenly she's fell 20 foot. Like, it's just really, like, you have to be really mindful of stuff like that. And especially audience comfort as well. If you're working, you know, anywhere site specific really, if you're outdoors or you're underground or, you know, anywhere like that, you need to just make sure that your audience aren't absolutely freezing the nuts off, basically. I think everything else was covered. The only thing about working in a theatre is, I guess, you do have to think about lighting and like sound design and stuff like that. But actually, when you're outdoors, it's all, like Helena said earlier, it's kind of all there for you. It's not, you don't have to think about that quite as much.
So you say that, but then at the same time, you've got to think about how the natural light is going to affect your own performances as well. So, you know, how do you guys get around that when you're producing?
You hire good actors. That's pretty much the end of that story, I would say.
I've not done much work outside at nighttime. I've done work in like the caves and stuff, and steam trains and blah blah blah, which have their own lights. If they work, had that before. A whole show in the dark. Yeah, I think obviously if you're performing at nighttime then and you're outside, you've got to think about those kinds of things. Yeah. Sorry, that wasn't very insightful.
No, so what's interesting, I'll just point back to the fact that you've also said you also have your own acting work. So you know, what made you want to produce, and how hard is it for you to juggle your producing and your acting and your directing and all those other things that you need to be doing just to keep yourselves afloat, especially in this time? I'll point that one to Amie.
Sorry, so doing all the roles at once is the question. Yes.
Yes.
Sorry, I was kind of thinking ahead of it. It's really hard, actually, sometimes. It's really fun, and if you're someone like me that likes being in control of things, it's quite good, because I definitely want to have creative control as well as being in the show sometimes. I always have an outside director who I work with. Jennifer Lunn is an amazing director, and I work with her a lot, and she's brilliant, and we've worked together for about, oh goodness, probably nearly 10 years now. So we have a really good understanding of each other, and it works very well. And I always work with people as well. The other actors are people I know quite well. So it's often like trying to manage the different relationships that can be quite hard, because I can't always be completely in producer role and I can't always be completely in actor role. You know, and there are times when you're having to step in and out of those, which I know the other two can talk about as well. So maybe I'll stop there, and because I know you two have got some experiences of that as well.
So pass on to Hayley.
So I have had to sort of direct and then act in things that I'm directing, which I find very, very, very difficult. And it's usually because of funding purposes. A lot of the time we have funding for 6 people, and those 6 people tend to have to do everything. So the producers in the cast, the actors in the cast, the directors in the cast, like we're all kind of together as almost like a collaborative in a way. I would always appoint someone to be a really good associate director as well, so that anything that, you know, I don't think I know what I look like when I'm acting, because I don't have eyes everywhere. So I just have to make sure that I can fully trust somebody else to make sure that I fit into it as well. And I'm trying to look at the big picture also, but then somehow have to slot my way in there as well. I would say, like, as well, like, I think Helena will probably tell you this, we both work as actors and as well as producers and directors, and sometimes juggling is really difficult. You've just got to have the most amazing communication skills with everybody, with your agent, so that you can say, actually, I'm off directing for 2 months now, so I can't actually go up for any jobs. And it's just a constant conversation. That's the only thing I will say.
Yeah, very much along the same lines as Hayley. I think when I was younger and when I was first starting out, I spent a lot of unnecessary time worrying about which one I was going to be. Was I going to be a producer? Was I going to be someone with my own theatre company? Or was I going to be an actor? Or was I going to be? And then over the years, when you realise you're freelance and you kind of have to adapt, and sometimes you just go where you want to go, sort of thing. I gradually realised I didn't need to make a decision. I just need to make sure that my time's managed well, and that, as Hayley's already said, that I'm just communicating well with the people that are concerned, whether that's my agent or the people that I work with in the theatre company. So yeah, it has got easier generally to juggle those roles, but echoing what's been said about when you're working with a small team, sometimes, often actually, I'm producing and I'm in it as well, and switching between those hats can be a little tricky, but I've got better at it over the years. I've got better at having meetings where I'm a producer and that's my head and that's what I'm doing, and then other times where I'm in rehearsals now and I'm trying to get my head into the part that I'm supposed to be doing. So trying to separate it out where possible is helpful.
So I realise I'm monopolising the questions quite a lot. So just before I start asking anything, has anybody got any questions for our producers?
Type in the chat. Oh, there we go.
Oh, nice, a quick question. So Kate, would you like to present this question? Where are you? Oh my God, I've got more than one person there. Let's have a look. There we go. If you can unmute your mic, that would be...
Hi. Yes, sorry, I wrote it very quickly. I'm just interested. I'm starting out on the whole way that you're doing it as well on my own, having done it through other companies before. I'm just really interested on the income question, because you haven't mentioned that at all. And I'm just wondering, do all three of you rely on grant income, you know, a one-off project grant, you know, or indeed if it's from a private funder, or do you pursue funding outside one-off project monies? And if so, have you got any ideas or any pointers on that for creating other revenue streams, and how you do it, both in a time of COVID and before, after, as I've written so brilliantly there?
Makes sense to me. Let's start with Hayley answering that one for us then.
Okay, so yes, I do rely on sort of one-off project funding. A lot of the time with Arts Council funding, Amie will probably be able to talk to you more about this, we tend to try and team up with other people or other artists to try and sort of get a collaboration going, which is you're more likely to get funding for your project. So sometimes when you go in with the idea of I am doing this project and nothing else is going to affect it and this is what I want to do, you're not going to get funding for it. You've got to keep your eyes open to like, I want to do this project, but I need to be open to the fact that I might have to allow it to change slightly in order for me to actually get any money to put this on. So a lot of the time we have done private sponsors. We were running the lunchtime theatre programme at I think it's called the Other Palace now. It's the Andrew Lloyd Webber place. We ran that for a couple of years, and we actually had private sponsors from the companies that were in the area because they loved coming at lunchtime to be able to see a show, and they didn't want us to stop, so they funded the company in order for us to continue. So there is funding opportunities. I think sometimes you slightly look outside of the box and go, okay, if I'm in this venue, what's around the venue that might want to give me some money? Just look at it like that.
Helena?
Yeah, so we have had Arts Council funding in the past, not lots of it, only on a couple of projects. As you can imagine, it's very competitive. And for our company, we're a bit of a weird, we fall between two stools really, because we're based in Wales, but a lot of our work is in England. And because of that setup, that can actually exclude us from Arts Council pots, depending on what we're doing. So what we've done instead, which I think, Kate, if I know your background slightly, might be of interest to you. We have, because we're quite interested in historically based work. So we've done stuff in the past on like World War I, we did stuff on Richard III and so on. So what we've done is approached organisations that we thought might be specifically interested in that work and might directly commission us. And we agree how much we're going to do the project for, and therefore, and those are the easiest ones from my point of view, because I'm not worrying about ticket sales or anything like that. I know how much money is coming in from the particular funder. So we've had that with museums before. We've approached them and said, we've got this specific thing, this is how much it will cost, yes or no. Same with our heritage railways, we've done the same there. And we ended up doing a really large project for the reburial of Richard III. And that was just a case of someone in the company having foresight that was coming up and saying, we've got this show, can we be involved somehow? So that's another way of doing it, is to look ahead. If you are interested in historical stuff, aren't you, Kate? I've not got that wrong. Yeah, okay. If there's any sort of anniversaries or events that you can tie into, that's quite handy, because then you can approach the people that might be interested in those things and see if they'll directly fund you.
And Amie?
Lovely. So I'll talk a bit about Arts Council. So Arts Council have funded my last 5 projects. And for me and the way I'm working, that is the best way to go. And so what I think, I didn't know about the Arts Council, and I always kind of felt like there's the Arts Council, they have all the money, they're sitting on it, and it's really hard to get. And I think I held that belief for a really, really long time, and it did me no favours holding that belief, because actually what I have found through the years is that the Arts Council are really lovely and really open to having conversations, and building a relationship with your, I think they're called the local relationship manager, but the person near you, is really invaluable. And to anyone that's thinking of applying, or I think maybe I'm not quite sure, but just kind of getting in touch and having like really open conversations, because actually I now know my relationship manager quite well, and I've had a couple of conversations with her where I've gone like kind of into the Arts Council office and I've got this idea, you know, will it get funded? And they can't say yes or no, but they can say if that's the kind of work they're interested in funding at the moment. I happen to, I don't know this for a fact, I feel that a lot of my work has been funded because it's LGBT work, and I know there's an interest in funding lesser heard voices and lesser heard narratives, and something I'm really passionate about is making sure that I'm getting stories on stage that haven't been heard before, and especially voices on stage that haven't been heard before historically. So I tend to push for that quite a lot in my when I'm kind of, that's the angle I take in a lot of my grant writing processes. So they're really, Arts Council are really lovely, kind of having a conversation with them. They do run workshops from time to time, and I don't know what the situation is with that at the moment, but they kind of run workshops where they take you through their filling in the form process, because something that really changed it for me was a really lovely friend of mine. Oh great, Hayley said they're all online, but you might be able to access an online course which will take you through the filling in the grant process, which can really help, because it's a bit like, oh, what do I do? But also what was I going to say? I was going to say something that's totally just left my head. There's one other really important thing about Arts Council. Oh no, so I do feel that there's a bit of a way of filling in the Arts Council forms, which is why I've been very successful for my last few projects. And the only reason I know how to do that is because I have a lovely friend called Angela, who's maybe in her late 50s and has been doing it for years, and she sat me down. I went and sat in Greenwich Park with her, and she told me how to do it, and it is a bit of I think there are certain things they want to hear and certain things you can say, but what I will say is, if you read the they kind of have a whole, if you print it off, it's like this, it's really thick, but they have a whole kind of side notes pack for the Arts Council funding thing. The thing I do is you go through and ring their sort of phrases, and then make sure you get those phrases back in your application, because then it shows you've got a really good understanding of what they're looking for. And I always think it's just saying how it will further your career, how it will kind of help you take the next step in your journey, and how you cannot do that without that funding, kind of really laid it out to them. And the other say, which is what I do a lot, is get the Arts Council to fund a pilot or a pilot run of a show, because I find this really helpful, is to create the show, but you don't necessarily always, and this might work for some people depending on how you're working and how you're not. For site specific, this wouldn't work because it's specific to a site, so you can't take it on. If you are developing a show that you're going to move on to other places, it can be really helpful to kind of ask for not the full 3-week run, but maybe you want to do like a 4-day run or something, and you're going to develop the show for that 4-day run, and then tell them that you want to take it on from there, but you're going to fund it yourself. Because once you have a show, I think the big expense is creating the show. Once you've got the actors, once they know the parts, once you've got the show, you've got the set, and you've got it, it's there, and it's, the potential is for it to be kind of monetized in other ways. So for instance, I've made my shows, but then I've made money from taking them to festivals. I've made them, but then I've put them in, and the Space have quite a good, well, they have the Space Garden, which is it's over in Isle of Dogs. I managed to get kind of a performance that they were paying for performances, but it just means that you see that thing come up on Arts News or whatever, and you go, oh, I can apply for that with my show, and there's money ready there. So that's quite a good way I found of doing it.
So Dave has come up with a question as well, which kind of links nicely to the way that you've just been saying it. So I'm just going to ask Dave, are you happy to, I have pressed ask to unmute. Technologically challenged here. Dave Moylan, are you happy to? Yeah. Would you like to present your question? Okay, so we've got a bit of quietness there. It's I'm not sure if your mic's quite working there, so I'll just present it for you until we can actually hear you. But what he said is, what do you think is the best way to approach theatres with a new show? And he says he's found them to be rather unresponsive. So I'll go on to Helena with this one.
I'm going to be brief on this one because I feel like the other two might answer this better than me. We spoke about this the other day in terms of fringe theatres. This is not directly related to this question, but hopefully it's helpful. Not all of them are brilliant, and just be mindful about where you put your money is what I would say. There are some, if a venue is just taking in your show with no questions asked about what the content is, whether it fits with their artistic goals, etc., then you're probably just there to pay them however much money they want you to pay them for the night, and they don't care if your show sells or whether it's artistically fulfilling for you or for their audiences. And I would say those are the venues to avoid, and there are a few of them in London. I'm not going to name them because not everyone has the same experience with different venues. But if you're getting that vibe, if they're not asking you questions about your show and the artistic content and whether it fits in, then it's probably not the venue to be trying to build your producing career with. That's what I'll say. Amie or Hayley?
Go with Amie and then do Hayley.
I mean, I think it's all about building relationships. I think if they don't know who you are, like kind of, you know, I think if you put yourself in the other position, I know that from kind of the theatres I work with, they are so inundated with stuff coming in. I think the best way, if you want to build a relationship with a theatre, go and see their work, find out who's who, get involved with their, you know, there's a lot of projects and things happening in theatres usually. I mean, it's not so much at the moment, but this could be a really good time to kind of figure out which theatres, and also finding out which theatres you think suit you in your work, because I think quite often it's finding, you know, I have a great relationship with Omnibus Theatre, but it's because kind of I find there, Marie's, who's the artistic director there, and my ethoses are quite aligned. We believe in the same kind of things, the same kind of work. I love the space. It's the kind of space I like working in, and it's you know, it's all about finding out who's who and building those relationships, and then it makes it much easier to approach them, and you know who you're going to, and you have kind of a bit of history there. That would be my advice.
Okay, and Hayley.
Yeah, I'm going to echo what Amie said. So I don't think, just thinking then about that question, I don't think I've ever worked anywhere that I didn't know somebody who had already worked there, works at the venue. I've got some kind of personal connection to somebody at the venue. I think the relationship is the most important thing, and particularly with fringe theatres. You know, if you've got a really amazing relationship with a fringe theatre and they care about your show, that's going to be a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. It's also going, why are you doing it in that space? I think that would be the question I'd ask. Why do you want to do, are you just asking loads of random theatres because you want to put your show on? What's your show about? What's the area around your theatre that you're asking? You know, what's the demographic like? Why would that lead in nicely with what your show's about? I think it's just trying to build connections between you and the venue, but also you and the audience that you're going to get coming to that venue, and work out, is there a link? And if there isn't, it's probably going to not be a great partnership. If you can't find the links of, oh, my show would work there perfectly and amazingly because of X, Y, and Z, then it's probably best for you to have a little look around. And it always helps if you know someone that has worked there or does work there or has had a previous relationship there before. It's much easier to get a really good vibe for what they're going to be like. I just used the word vibe. I'm really sorry. I hate that word.
That's fine. So I've had a message from Heloise. I hope I'm saying that correct. I do apologise if I'm not. She can't come on mic and camera. She'd love to hear how you approach finding out about legalities of performing in a site-specific space. For example, if you want to set a show in a cafe or a restaurant. And a bit of a side question, do those legalities change if it's a contemporary show which you've got the rights for through an agent? I'll point this one out to Helena.
Yeah, legalities. I'll start to answer it, but please, Heloise, put in if we're on the wrong track. I think you mean in terms of not funding, shut up. In terms of insurance, that's the word. Hopefully that's what you mean. If not, please put in the chat. If you mean in terms of making sure it's insured, etc., from that point of view, then we have company insurance, which covers all of our activities. We make sure that our insurance is broad enough to cover the different types of things that we do. If we feel like it's something really unusual, oh great, she said yes, insurance and making money through box office. Okay. So yeah, if we feel like it's something really unusual, then we might have a chat with the insurers and just check that we're okay. Also, the venue that we're going into should have their own insurance as well. And they are the best people to talk to in terms of the health and safety of the site. And I would always let the venue lead on the health and safety of it, because it's their site. And a lot of the stuff is actually their responsibility. It's just what you do with the actors and the audience, really, that's your responsibility. So yeah, if you have insurance already, just make sure that you're covered, and make sure that you speak to your site about their insurance and understand fully what their health and safety procedures, policies, evacuation plans are, and all of those things. And then it's the risk assessment. You need to walk around that venue and write down everything that might be a potential hazard or problem for the audience member, risk assess it. A risk assessment doesn't mean that you cannot do that activity in that place. It's just mitigating the potential for harm to your actors or your audience. Now, you mentioned about rights. I don't personally work a lot. In fact, only once have I done a show where rights have been involved, because I tend to work with new writing. I'm not sure if either of you two have been involved that much with rights.
It should say in your rights, so when you get the rights, you usually get a big explanation of like where you're allowed to, how much, what the audience capacity is like for performing to X amount of people. It should say I don't know, I feel like you've applied for the rights for something, but you should get told where you're allowed to put that on and how many people are allowed to be there. That usually comes under that.
Amie?
That's all I have to say.
Yeah, I don't have, all my work is new writing and devised, so that's never been an issue for me.
Okay, so have we got any more questions from the audience, as it were? You can tell I'm an actor as well, can't you? That's good. Helena says thanks, that was really helpful. Whilst we're waiting, we've only got a few more minutes left, so I'll pop onto a couple of other questions that we've I've kind of prepped. Here's a nice one for you. We'll start off with Amie. Role models. Who are your role models for producing?
Oh, that's a really hard question, but also easy. There are just loads. There are loads. I have so many. My friend Jen Lunn is amazing. She was a producer. She worked with the National Theatre for ages and did a lot of work on River Stage there. And she's the one who directs my kids shows, and I just watch her in awe, because I don't quite have what she has, in that she'll kind of walk into a venue, she's friends with everyone straight away, but she's also kind of like, I'm going to tell everyone, like, you know, we need this doing, and it gets done. And I've definitely improved my ability to just ask for what I need in a way that's polite but firm when you're in a venue or whatever. Obviously not, you know, so you're not annoying people, but you're also getting what you need. So she's amazing, and it's just been wonderful watching her over the years. She's kind of my big one. My friend Stella Duffy, who's kind of more of a director, but she produced on a big project years ago that I worked on as well. And kind of watching her run around and do everything, I was quite inspired. And actually, she was one of the key people that made me go, oh, maybe I could just have a go at just making things happen myself. That was about 10 years ago. And since then, I've sort of just watched these people and kind of thought, well, what would they do? So yeah, they're my two big producing role models.
Hayley.
It's really difficult, this question. I think my main role model is a man called Brian Huck. So he produces for Immersive Everywhere and for the Arts Theatre West End. They're called Hartshorn Hook Productions. And he was a young lad from Bury in Lancashire, and, you know, very working class roots, and basically used to put on, like, you know, small things that he was passionate about in the north. And now, you know, he runs the Immersive Everywhere building in London. He's got they're the Immersive Gatsby. So actually, one of the reasons that I just think he's so wonderful is, even during this COVID time, I think he is one of the only running theatre shows that are happening in London at the moment, because he just thinks about stuff and goes, okay, I have been told that I can't do X, Y, and Z, so I'm just going to work around how to get around doing X, Y, and Z, and I'll just do it slightly differently, and I'm going to continue. Like, he doesn't go, oh, we can't do anything, I have to stop now, that's it, we're done, COVID's took over all of our lives. He goes, okay, no, there's ways around this, and I'm going to continue making art because it's important. And he's just a really inspiring man. He won't be told no, basically, and I think that's a good quality of a producer.
Me, yeah. So I grew up in North Wales, which has got a really tiny theatre scene. So I didn't really know of any producers or theatre makers or anything other than, like, you know, super famous ones on the West End that were way out of the league of everything that I was trying to do. So it kind of just, the people that I worked with to start this company, we just all completely stumbled in the dark until we ended up with something that was remotely professional, and that's how I came to it. So I can't identify a specific role model, but I'm going to say something quite cheesy now, so get ready. So the ladies on this call, I've known as friends for years, but it occurred to me a few months back that we've not worked together, which is why the idea for this project, Hive Mind, came about, so that I could learn and we could learn from each other. I was like, I know these brilliant women doing this brilliant work, and we've not worked together. And it's been everything I've hoped for. We had a lovely week last week, just learning from each other, and it's really sort of sparked new creativity and things. So I wouldn't go as far as to call my role models, ladies, but they're certainly superstars. And it's been really fun to sort of to get to know them in a professional capacity, having been friends with each other for a long time. Yeah, that's me.
So I'm very aware that we are running quite short of time, so I'll stick in one final question, just because I think this is a good one to end on, really. So very quickly, just from our producers, what advice would you offer to someone that is starting out, especially during these difficult times? Maybe give a maximum of 3 points of just really good advice that you wish you had when you were starting out doing this. Okay, so Amie.
Okay, advice. Just really communicate what you need from people in a nice but firm way. I wasn't very good at that for a long time, which helped me up a bit. The second thing is, when working on a project, it should bring you, which I found this the other day, when thinking about projects, okay, they have to bring you 2 of these 4 things: joy, money, networks, or career advancement. Okay, and if it doesn't have 2 of those, it's not worth doing, and I wish I had have learned that sooner too. 3, try and pay people, because I think we all agree you get more out of people when you can pay them, and sometimes it means waiting, but I really think it's worth waiting to pay people. And me and Hayley were joking the other day, I'll tell you this very quickly, because on my first project, I think I was just like, I saved my own money to pay people £30 to come and work with me. It wasn't very much at all, and Hayley was saying the other day, actually she thinks she turned it down because it wasn't even worth taking it. And I said she can have it anytime she wants, it's there in my bank for her. And that was too little really anyway, but I just find when you pay people you get so much more, and it just creates kind of a contract that you don't have if you're not paying people, and also we all have to live, you know, so I think that's really important.
Hayley.
I really, really agree with what Amie said. I think sometimes it is really important. I mean, I think we get very passionate about the projects that we want to put on, and sometimes we just want to do everything now. I think it's important to pay people, and yes, that does mean waiting sometimes till you can get the money together. However, I will say that if you've not had any experience at all producing, it's always worth shadowing somebody on a project. I think that's really important. I've shadowed quite a few people to learn how to produce, you know, learn what the role is and what you actually have to do and how to solve problems when things go very, very wrong, which happens. And I just think it's important to listen to advice, but also, you know, if you're really desperate to put something on, right now putting things on online is a kind of easy way to start, really. I think we're in a really good place where, you know, everyone isn't really doing very much and would be up for maybe doing a reading or, you know, just learning something really basic first, like how do you assemble a group of people all at the same time. That really is, I think, lesson number one. So yeah, I would just advise that, just listen to people who maybe have got slightly more experience than you.
Okay, and Helena?
Yeah, everything they've already been said. If you're lucky enough to find a mentor, then listen to everything they've said. I echo what the others have said about paying people. Absolutely, professionals need to be paid for their time. I will, however, say that when I started out, there was no way that I would have been able to, I didn't even know how to access the money. You know, I didn't know what the Arts Council was. I didn't know anything. So the only way for me to sort of create work to start with was to ask my friends to get involved. I knew lots of actors, and I actually don't see that there's anything wrong with asking your friends, you know.
Yeah.
So you can all work together. There's benefit for everybody. There is a difference, I think, when you're if you're advertising to strangers and asking strangers to come and give up however many weeks or months of their time for nothing. That's a different thing. But friends helping each other out, especially if you're all learning, you're all benefiting, I think that's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
And then the minute you can pay people, try and make sure that you're giving back to the people that have sort of helped you along the way, as soon as you can. And the Arts Council, if you're lucky enough to get funding, they're great because they want you to be paying people industry rates. So that's brilliant if you can get funding from them, because then you can be paying people a decent wage. Other than that, I would just say, just try and be, it is a logistical job. You are thinking about budgets and timings and everything else. But just make sure that's not the only place your head is in. Like, keep your eyes open to the people that you're working with. We said, I think at the beginning of this, just a check-in with tea and a chat can go a long way in the middle of the project. Even if people are seemingly fine, you never know what might come out of it. So just taking a few minutes to just check in with the key people that you're working with, checking that everyone's feeling all right, as well as delivering stuff on time, on budget, blah, blah, blah. It really is about the people, so making sure that the people are okay.
Okay, so unfortunately that is all we have time for. If you do feel like there's something that we haven't covered, you can always get in contact with us via email. What I've done in the chat, you will see that I've posted up our Ceridwen email. You can also see it on the Ceridwen website as well. So just give me just pop those questions over and we'll ask them, and then we'll endeavour to get back to you with as best an answer as we can. I just want to say thank you so much to everyone that's joined for all the questions. I really hope that you've taken something out of this Q&A, because I definitely know that I have. So thank you very much to Amie, Hayley and Helena for all their support, all of their knowledge. I just want to say thank you, stay safe, please stay safe, and I look forward to doing this again soon. Thank you, everyone.
Gemma. Thank you, Gemma.
Thanks, Gemma. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.